I'm Michael Peters, sports editor of the Tulsa World, sitting alongside Dave Sittler, columnist for the Tulsa World, and welcome to another edition of Sports Extra on Demand. And Dave, it just every day is a new day, and every day we wake up in a different world when it comes to realignment. Last night, almost before bedtime, it seemed like Oklahoma was ready to go for the Pac-12. They had their final demands into the Big 12 to maybe make a benevolent gesture on the way out, and then the Pac-12 drops a bombshell last night and decides they're not going to expand. You were there Monday. You talked to David Boren on Monday. You talked to the folks, to the OU folks on Monday. You've been talking to people there throughout the week. What is the sense of that announcement last night and where Oklahoma goes from here?
Well, I think it caught everybody off guard at OU, or that was a real charade they put on Monday. What happened, I think what happened is that Texas and the Pac-12 may have played OU a little bit on this deal. Pac-12 told OU that we're going to take you in Oklahoma State no matter what. Then they decided they were hoping to get Texas. When they found out they couldn't get Texas, they backed out. So I think what's going to happen now is they'll stay in the Big 12. I know OU wants to add at least one team right away. I think that would be BYU. And then they would hope to grow that. It sounds like Dan Beebe, the commissioner, is going to get fired or asked to resign. And as we reported today, Chuck Ninus, the former Big 8 commissioner, has been asked to be the interim.
It sounds like, and just from my perspective, it seems like Oklahoma was fairly well emasculated last night by the Pac-12 announcement. And so it seems like they have very few options now as we go forward. Is their best option now to take whatever deal Texas gives them and just pretend it was what they wanted to begin with? Does that seem like the best option that's on the table?
They could probably get the SEC to invite them, but they don't want to go to the SEC. So yeah, I think I've been told by sources at OU they know they can't get the Longhorn Network changed at all, so they're going to try to get things like longer commitments from Texas and all the other schools as to how long they'll stay in the conference, and they're going to propose equal revenue sharing other than Texas Longhorn Network, which means they will be giving up some money because A&M, Texas, Nebraska, OU, and the original Big 12 got more money in the revenue share.
And that was what the interesting thing has been about this whole discussion is that, you know, A&M and Oklahoma State to some extent have talked about a fair playing field, although they were the ones who all voted for a non-fair playing field and had that as their advantage. Now, here's the interesting thing today. I've seen on Twitter, seen comments from DeLost Dodds. It sounds like they've been emboldened by this announcement a little bit. There's just been some discussion about now asking Dallas for more concessions to keep the Red River rivalry in the state, that they've said that, you know, profit sharing for the Longhorn Network is totally off the table, those kind of things. It seems like they've been emboldened by this discussion. Is there any thought at all that perhaps Oklahoma State can get together and perhaps have a partner with Fox or ESPN and perhaps put together their own network to somewhat mitigate some of the Longhorn Network from a revenue and from an exposure standpoint?
Well, first of all, isn't it surprising that they're emboldened? The Longhorns, no. But OU was pretty well down the road, Michael, on their own network. And in talking to some people yesterday, there is thought that the schools other than Texas, once they get their networks together or whatever, like K-State's doing something a little different, they may pool their resources that way and divide them. But that's really all they can do. And as far as OU Texas in the Cotton Bowl, they've got a contract they've got to live up to for a few more years, but they've made an awful lot of demands on the Cotton Bowl to renovate, and they've pumped millions into it. So that'll be interesting. But, you know, Texas is right back in the driver's seat.
Do you see any sort of, like, and you feel pretty confident that Oklahoma's not going to use the nuclear option, which to me is the SEC is. I mean, they've been so against it across the board. Do you think that's off the table? And what do you make of, you know, Missouri? There was talk that they were going to be the 14th in the SEC to join A&M. A&M has come out the last couple of days and said, yes, definitively, we're leaving no matter what Boone Pickens says or anybody else. Is Missouri gone? Is Missouri committed to this group?
I think they really are. Missouri's Chancellor, Brady Deaton, is the chancellor or the chairman this year of the Big 12. And behind the scenes, Michael, he's worked really, really hard to keep this whole thing together. And I think he kind of got an inkling of it yesterday, something might be going on. And I know that President Bourne of OU and Chancellor Deaton flew to College Station at least once, trying to talk the A&M people into changing their mind and coming back. And I think they're going to try one more Hail Mary attempt at that. I don't think that will work. But no, I think Missouri's in it for the long run right now. And of course, by tonight, they'll have pulled out and gone to the SEC after I say that. But that's one of the reasons OU wants these rights extended. You know, get commitments from every school. Like one person says, we don't want a year from now Texas will open with Notre Dame. You know, we want them to stay here.
Right. Now, all right, for all the money that you have in your pocket right now, what would you bet on now as to what we'll be talking about from a realignment perspective at this time next year?
This time next year, I think that we'll be looking at how BYU is doing as their first year as a member of the Big 12, and wondering if the Big 12 has stabilized enough that they might look at adding a couple more teams. People have told me that now there's more interest in TCU and there's more interest in Air Force, and that might be two teams that would get them back to 12. But then with TCU, you get right back to Texas. Texas doesn't want them.
Right.
So, but I think that the first move will be to get BYU, get to 10, if they can't convince your alma mater to stay home.
Which I'm guessing maybe they can, unless perhaps the SEC decides that it's not worth expanding, and perhaps they can somehow back out of that offer that they gave to A&M. Now, you know, realignment's been crazy when it knocks the other crazy story off the front page, which is the OSU Tulsa game. I was there, watched the last 3 quarters, left at 3:30 a.m. That was a very difficult night, a very difficult setup for everybody. I've seen, you know, you've talked about how you thought it was kind of a lack of leadership on Tulsa's part. It does seem like it was somewhat of a kind of a money grab to make the team stay out there that late. What do you make of that game on Saturday night?
Like Nightmare on 11th Street. And I cannot believe to this day that that they did that to the young players. I think the leadership was really lacking. Now everybody's pointing fingers at everybody, but it seems like the bottom line is Bubba Cunningham, the AD at Tulsa, made that decision. I think it was the wrong decision. Now it comes out today. They have insurance. They could have repaid those tickets without the worry then, supposedly that night, was, well, we don't want to lose the money on this ticket sales. But now with the insurance, you wonder why, Michael, they stayed around there. And you listen to Mike Gundy, and I think every complaint he had about that was correct.
What do you make of now, like from a football perspective, how does OSU turn it around next week? I mean, they looked a little sloppy on defense, but it's kind of to me, it's hard to evaluate what that game was. I said in the blog, I guess earlier this week, maybe the first team to 70 this weekend between OSU and A&M wins. What do you make of that game, which is kind of the highlight of the day in the Big 12?
Yeah, it's really kind of sad. That's a terrific game, and so far this week all we've written about is realignment. But I think that OSU is going to have a hard time down there. Both Oklahoma schools seem to have a difficult time in College Station. But you look at the yardage they gave up against Tulsa. You know, A&M has the 2 best running backs, I think, in the Big 12. I know they were playing at 3 o'clock in the morning, but that's an awful lot of yardage to give up. So I think that that OSU will struggle to win there, and then if they don't, that's going to end a lot of their dreams.
And oh, by the way, hey, Oklahoma's still #1, and they beat Florida State, and that got knocked off the front by the rainstorm and now realignment. Missouri knocked them off when they were #1 in the BCS last year. Do you see any chance that there's any sort of repeat of that? Is there any lull after that Florida State game when Oklahoma hosts Missouri this weekend?
No, when you look at, I mean, OU is so dominant at home, even they can have an off game and they can win at home for whatever reason. I read somewhere that the last time they lost at home, some of these players were in the 8th grade. And so Missouri, I mean, has kind of done some trash talking, but the OU players just seemed kind of pumped. They were so relieved to get through Florida State because they didn't play that great, especially on offense, and they still won. Their defense was really impressive to me. So I think they're now know they're on a roll, and I think personally they're going to roll through the rest of the schedule until OSU, and then that'll be maybe the showdown we all hope for.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Join us again next week for another edition of Sports Extra on Demand.